Welcome everyone to this month's Financial Security for All Community of Practice webinar. Just a little housekeeping first. We'll have the Q&A open, so if you have questions or comments you're welcome to put those in the Q&A. You'll see that icon on the bottom of your screen if you hover your cursor over there, and we'll be sure and circle back around to those and make sure those are responded during the webinar. We are so happy to have with us today a team of extension educators from University of Wisconsin-Madison Division of Extension and Michigan State University Extension. So please join me in welcoming them. Be sure you stay around for long enough at the end to respond to the evaluation survey that we'll have. We'll put that in the chat. We'd love to gather your feedback. So this team is here today. You may recognize some of these folks from our community of practice. They're here to talk about how the Inflation Reduction Act can benefit consumers in your community. They'll focus on how community residents can avoid home remodeling scams, as well as sharing information about sustainable living curriculum that was created. So we have with us today Jenny Abel, Program Manager for Financial Security, Sherrie Gruder, Distinguished Sustainable Design Specialist and Energy Strategist with University of Wisconsin-Madison, and Dr. Erica Tobe with, she's an Extension Specialist for Finance and Home Ownership with Michigan State University Extension. So please join me in welcoming them to the monthly webinar for the Financial Security Community of Practice.
Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to very briefly kick things off before I turn things over to Sherrie. So I'm going to share our presentation here. And we want to start off with just a very quick overview of what we're going to be covering today. So Sherrie is going to be giving us an overview of the Inflation Reduction Act. I will be doing providing some brief information about the ways that the Act can benefit consumers in our communities. And Erica is going to be talking about loans and services that can benefit consumers, tips for consumers, specifically how you can access information about your state's particular programs, and also a new sustainable living course that is coming out of Michigan State, Purdue, and University of Florida. And Megan is going to be putting in the chat a link to a fact sheet that we created to go along with today's presentation. And we encourage you to access and download that fact sheet because we're going to be referring to it pretty frequently throughout the presentation today. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Sherrie.
Thank you, Jenny. And hello, everyone. Today, I'm going to talk to you about the Inflation Reduction Act, which is fondly known as IRA. And there's another bill that was introduced, which is the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. So our favorite cousins have become Bill and IRA, and that can help you remember it. And I'm going to talk about how we're moving to create a clean energy economy. Next slide, please. So the Inflation Reduction Act was signed by the Biden-Harris administration in August of 2022. It is a law, and the purpose of it is to get to 100% clean energy and net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. And there's an interim goal that we get halfway there. We cut greenhouse gas emissions in half by 2030. And there is unprecedented funding put into this bill, $391 billion in the form of clean energy tax credits, home energy efficiency, and electric vehicle rebates, and also money to cut methane, which is a much more potent greenhouse gas even than carbon. And the reason I'm talking to you about this today, it's really important, is that this is so huge because we're moving our economy from a fossil fuel-based economy to a clean energy-based economy. And there was a poll that was done by the Washington Post and the University of Maryland of Americans across the country about what they knew about the Inflation Reduction Act. And it turned out that 71% of people knew very little or zero about it. So you are not going to be among them, and I hope that you will help change those numbers for us. Okay, next slide, please. So how do we transform to a clean energy economy? Well, it's like changing from the industrial revolution to the clean energy revolution, and it takes everything. We have to go to clean energy deployment, conservation and resilience, to climate smart agriculture, changing our transportation systems, our buildings and how they're run, their efficiency and the fuels that run them. Also addressing manufacturing, making this all about made in America, which is also a resilience move, and then pollution reduction and environmental justice. So I'm going to highlight some of these for you. Next slide, please. Creating a clean grid is the first basis of this. Right in the past, our grid, as you know, was powered mostly by coal. And so that's a fossil fuel energy that produces carbon dioxide emissions, which is what's warming our planet. And so the idea is to move to a clean grid, a renewable energy grid. There's also been $11 billion that have been invested by the administration into rural electrification. So the idea is that everybody is going to benefit from this across the country. And that's also the health benefits are huge to all of this. And so clean energy is hydro, solar, wind, battery storage, and nuclear. And they're also looking at hydrogen. And to change out our grids are capital intensive upfront. But that's a very short period of time because the operation costs of this are nearly nothing. So it actually is not so much environmentally motivated on the part of the utilities, but actually it's because it costs them less over the long run to run this, and it will cost us less in our bills. And the prediction is at this point, the way we're moving, that our grid might become 80% carbon free by 2030. Next slide, please. The next is electrifying our homes. We have 124 million homes in the US and they're connected to the grid, but 4 to 6 million are not connected. They're called rural remote communities, and this bill addresses those, and a big part of it is to end energy poverty. And to move to clean energy, it means we're going to electrify our lives. So 8.5 billion is actually going into home energy rebates through 2031. So it not only supports upgrading the infrastructure of our roads and our energy output, but also upgrading individuals' homes and infrastructure. And so the prediction also is that the energy savings to consumers as a result of all of this will be $37 billion a year on energy bills, which is an average of almost $500 a household per year. Next. Upgrading to a clean transportation economy. By 2030 already, you'll see that 53% of US car sales will be electric vehicles. Right now, it's actually cheaper to lease an electric vehicle than to buy an internal combustion engine vehicle. There are, Jenny will tell you about what's available to offset the costs of those vehicles. But adoption also will require a lot of infrastructure, 1.2 million public and 28 million private EV charging stations. And so this next year we'll have EV charging stations every 50 miles along every US major highway. And then the next tranche is going to be about building them out in communities. So we're expecting that this is going to result in a 45 to 60% decrease in foreign oil imports by 2030, which again is a national security issue. Next page or slide. A big push of this is to change our economy to one that's made in the USA. So manufacturing investments for clean energy are included in the bill to create solar panels and wind turbine parts in the United States, to develop battery plants for vehicles, but also battery storage for wind and solar utility scale grids, to create the electric vehicles here. Also the inverters, and to convert gas vehicles. There's also big investment in workforce training. It looks at apprenticeships and also the prevailing wage, but a lot about creating local jobs, and these are good paying jobs. So the benefits would decrease dependence on overseas manufacturing, create reliable supply chains for us, because those supply chains will mostly be within our country, increase energy security, improve our economic competitiveness. So it's all good for our economy. Next slide, please. A big part, as I mentioned, is about investing in disadvantaged communities, and that includes Black, Indigenous, people of color or BIPOC communities, remote rural communities, tribal communities, and low-income communities. And there was an executive order signed to do that. It's called Justice 40 or J40, where 40% of the funding, but more importantly, 40% of the benefits from federal investments need to go to disadvantaged communities. And to do that, one of the things they've done is to create something called TIC-TACs, which are regional thriving community technical assistance centers. They're in, as you can see on the map, in EPA regions all across the country, to help these Justice 40 communities that typically don't have staff or time or even expertise to get federal funding to actually provide technical assistance to help them bring the funding into their communities and raise their level of quality of life. Next slide. So all in all, the Inflation Reduction Act is investing $369 billion to transition us to a clean energy economy in the United States. And this resource from cleanenergy.gov goes through all of it if you're interested in seeing that part of it. So Jenny is going to talk to you about actually how it will benefit consumers.
Great. Thank you so much, Sherrie. So those of us in financial education, and in extension, we're no stranger to acronyms, and we're used to IRA standing for something other than the Inflation Reduction Act. We probably talk about this a lot, and we're used to it standing for individual retirement account, but we've got a new breakdown of the acronym to get used to now. So I'm going to, as Sherrie said, get into talking a little bit about how this new legislation can directly benefit consumers. So there are two types of savings that are available to homeowners and actually even to renters. And we're going to look at an example of that as we go through. So the first is federal tax credits, and those are available right now. And the second is rebates. Those are coming soon, or in some cases may already be available depending on your state, and those are managed by the states. And we will be talking about how you can find out what your individual state is doing and how you get connected with the office in your state that's managing those. So we just briefly want to share two more acronyms, and there's it's not necessary really to get into the weeds with these, but we just wanted you to see these so that you're familiar with them if you see them. And also they're going to come up again further on in this presentation. So the first one, HOMES, the Homeowners Managing Energy Savings Program, is basically focusing on the overall shrinking of home energy through weatherization and renovations. And the second, the HERA program, High Energy Efficiency Electric Home Rebate Act, is focused on providing savings to low and moderate income households. So what sorts of home improvements are covered in this act? So we've got a few examples here. The first one that we want to talk about is heat pump, air conditioners, and heaters. So heat pumps are something that came on the scene that became more familiar to us relatively recently, and they're much more efficient than older gas furnace systems. They heat and cool homes through electricity. They also help to reduce healthcare costs overall, because gas furnaces have been found to cause lots of health concerns and can increase healthcare costs. So as you see from the chart, there are both tax credits and rebates available for heat pumps. And so consumers can get a tax credit of up to 30% of the cost, up to $2,000 per year. And they can get a discount of up to $8,000 depending on their income. Insulation, air sealing, and ventilation. Again, the tax credit is 30% or up to $1,200 per year, and there's a discount, or in some cases, a point of sale rebate up to $1,600. Solar is also included in this, and there's a tax credit of that can cover 30% of the equipment and installation costs. A few other examples, and these are focused on tax credits. So for windows, exterior doors, and home energy audits, we've got tax credits available. Again, you're seeing that theme of 30% of the cost, and then there are specific limits on how much consumers can get in terms of tax credits for each of those things. So Sherrie was talking about how electric vehicles are also included in the Inflation Reduction Act, and there are discounts. Well, right now, these are in the form of tax credits. So if you went out tomorrow and bought an electric vehicle, you would need to work on getting these credits through your taxes of up to $7,500 for a new vehicle and up to $4,000 for a used vehicle. But as of January 1st, 2024, these tax credits are going to transform into point of sale discounts from the dealer. So that is beneficial to consumers because they can get the savings immediately. So now note that this only applies to vehicles and parts that are made in the US. So if someone is getting an electric vehicle that is a foreign made, these discounts would not apply. So these only work for ones that are made in the US. It's also good to note that these are available both for purchasing and for leasing vehicles. So here is an example, because sometimes it can be kind of hard to figure out how does this work. And also a lot of this is dependent on a family's income. So we were talking earlier about the heat pump, heater, and air conditioner. So for households with incomes of less than 80% of the area median income, they can get a 100% rebate up to $8,000. And the cost of most heat pumps around the country is below $9,500. So that's a pretty good chunk of the price that can be that consumers can get as a rebate. Also, heat pumps, and Sherrie can talk more about this if there are questions, vary a lot depending on what part of the country you're in. So depending on where you live, you'll want to look into the ones that are appropriate for your area. So households with incomes between 80 and 100% of the area median income, the discount will cover 50% of the costs up to $8,000. And then households with incomes over 150% of the AMI are not eligible for discounts or rebates, but they can still get the tax credit. And that is limited to $1,200 per year or $600 per item. So again, because all of this is kind of a lot and can seem a little confusing, we wanted to share just a couple of case studies to put this into perspective. So this is a case study of a family of 4 living in Cleveland. Their annual income is $128,000, which sounds like a lot, but it's actually below 80% of the area median income. So if you look at all of these different purchases that they're planning on making, they can get almost 100% of the costs reimbursed to them through rebates or the tax credits or the discounts. So they want to replace their propane range with an electric range. The estimated cost of that is $749. And so they can get an upfront discount of that full amount because they make under 80% of the AMI. And also look how you can spread this out over multiple years because these credits and rebates are good through the early 2030s. People can map out what they want to do over time, and you don't have to do everything at once. And so as you can see, there's a few other improvements and renovations and purchases that they're planning to make, and they can get almost 100% of the costs reimbursed to them. So I mentioned earlier that it might seem like renters are left out of this, but we can see that renters can benefit from some of these rebates and discounts as well. And they can also encourage their landlords to take advantage of the savings that are available. So this is a case study of a retired couple living in Atlanta. Their annual income is only $30,000. So they meet that threshold of being below 80% of the area median income. And so they also have planned out a few different purchases that they want to make. They're going to buy a portable induction burner and oven, which is something that can sit on a countertop in their kitchen and uses electricity instead of gas. And so they can get 100% of that cost as a discount. They're going to replace 2 of their window unit air conditioners with 2 window unit heat pumps, and they can get 100% of that as a discount. And in 2025, they plan on buying a combo washer and clothes dryer, and they can get 100% of that cost reimbursed, or as a discount rather. So Erica is going to be talking more about this publication, but I just wanted to reference it really briefly here. We were really excited to discover this just came out last month from the Department of Treasury to show that there's a lot of focus on the impacts that climate change is having on personal finances these days. And this publication, you've got the link in the chat to access this. You can also access it through the fact sheet, and we have that link in the chat for you as well. It has a very extensive appendix on different resources that are available to you. And this is just a very brief snapshot of some of the resources that you'll find at the back of that publication. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Erica to talk about our next sections.
Thank you, Jenny. So as we start to talk about loans and services to support some consumers, if you can go to the next slide, please, Jenny. So one of the things we wanted to talk about is the fact that there are a variety of loan products and services available to support energy efficiency improvements. So Jenny talked about some of the discounts and the rebates, as well as some of the tax credits that are available. But if homeowners would like to make larger changes to their home, there are some loan programs and incentives that are available. There's also different types of loans available in some states. to help property owners finance energy efficiency improvements, as well as loan products available through many of the mortgage options that we have. And so helping consumers understand that there's also a variety of additional supports if they're not able to finance it personally, that there are some available options to be able to do. What's interesting about a lot of these programs and options is that each state a lot of times is instituting its own programs and plans. So looking at your state housing finance agency to see what kind of green loan programs exist and what some of the incentives are for participating are available is really important. So for instance, when I started looking at this for Michigan, we actually have a loan program that's available called Michigan Saves. They work with lenders in the state to be able to help consumers who want to make these energy efficiency options be able to do that for a very low cost loan program option. So that is one program that's available. And again, each state and their housing financing agencies may have their own specific programs available. This PACE loans, these property assessed clean energy, again, are available in some states, so not all. And again, have some different options to be able to help property owners finance these energy efficiency improvements. And so we have provided the link so you can check out if your state participates and what the loan programs may be available within that program as well. And then I mentioned Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, FHA, USDA, and VA also have a variety of different loan options. Either if you're going to be purchasing a home and you want to make energy efficiency options, or if you want to make home improvements, there's available loan programs that are available through those options as well. And so again, checking out based on your eligibility, based on if it's going to qualify. So for instance, USDA, a lot of times those home loans are available in rural communities, and rural is a very broad definition. And so seeing if a residence may fall into that particular category as well. But just knowing that there are a variety of different programs and loans available for homeowners to access. So I talked about the fact that, again, state programs and services really do vary. And one of the things that we've learned as a team, as we've started to investigate, even just among our two different states, is really how much they vary and how the Inflation Reduction Act is actually being implemented in each state. And so checking out your local state to see what state-specific tax credits are available, what specific rebates are available, and how they're actually being instituted is really, really important. And so checking your local energy departments, checking your various economic development departments, again, how this information in these programs are flowing through your state may vary. And so really doing a little bit of research on your own end about what that looks like. Also, again, these programs do vary as far as some of the loan programs that are available, as well as how they're actually instituting and when they are instituting these various programs. So we wanted to talk about some of the important consumer tips for consumers to really understand, because as we think about this from a financial literacy standpoint, there are some important distinctions that we really want to make sure consumers understand the differences of. So one of the first big distinctions we have is really understanding the differences between tax credits as well as these discounts and rebates. And really understanding with tax credits, these tax credits are non-refundable. And so helping consumers understand if they're non-refundable tax credits, they're only going to get that refund up to the tax that they owe. And so really understanding what that looks like and how much you can actually qualify per year. One of the things that I have found is that there's no lifetime dollar limit on these particular tax credit options, but helping consumers understand what that difference is and what a non-refundable tax credit means. For discounts and rebates, again, understanding how that information is getting returned to them, how that money is getting returned. And again, those different specifics related to, especially with the electric vehicle, when it's a point in sale rebate and really what that means and understanding that difference. So helping consumers understand, again, it's based on income, but then how much consumers can actually access. And Jenny did a good example of really showing a tiered approach for how this could be the maximum benefit for consumers. Also wanted to talk about the fact that there are, again, federal and state opportunities that exist. So really helping consumers understand what are some of the federal credits that are available, as well as the discounts and rebates that are available. But then states are also instituting their own energy efficiency rebates and credits as well. And so helping consumers understand and understanding what the specific benefits are in your particular state and how consumers can access those benefits. And again, this is something as we've started to kind of uncover this within just our 2 states, seeing the differences and how these are laid out is really has been interesting. And so again, starting to really investigate what that looks like for your state. One of the other pieces, Sherrie did a really good job talking a little bit about the benefits of accessing these energy efficiency updates and what those benefits are going to be for us as a society and thinking about this. But we also have to help consumers understand the pros and cons and the financial cost of making these energy efficiency changes. And so again, part of this is giving them information for what they need to know about how they can access the resources and what this looks like, but then also understanding how this fits in within their financial budget, making sure that they are aware of various loan programs, but then also making sure that they're making these choices that's going to best benefit them. And so really kind of talking about what those pros and cons are and how they can start to make those consumer decisions and really make those choices for some of these larger costs that they may have. And then also we talk about this a lot with financial education, but helping consumers understand that rule of 3. And we talk a lot of times about helping consumers really analyze 3 different providers when making low cost improvements, making sure that you're getting 3 different quotes. But just like any other big consumer choice that we make and consumer decision, we want consumers to really evaluate all the different options that are available. One of the things, as we've talked about in our small team and getting these conversations, is we've all had different providers actually show up at our doorstep and talk with us about, accessing solar or having energy efficiency updates. And so sometimes those sales pitches and marketing pitches can be really enticing, but just helping consumers understand that they need to evaluate all their options. And just because somebody's coming to your door with that information doesn't mean that might be the most reputable option available. One of our team members actually talked about working with her local utility company, and she actually wanted to make some energy efficiency updates. She received a quote from a utility company, and then she went to a few other providers as well and realized her local utility company was actually the highest cost. So again, helping consumers understand that they need to get those 3 different quotes. And just like anything else when we do with financial education, that rule of 3 is really, really important. The other thing we wanted to talk about, again, with financial education is really helping people understand that scams, again, exist. And just like anything else in Michigan a few years ago, we had the Flint water crisis. And when anytime that there's an issue or a concern and there could be a potential benefit for somebody, sometimes scams do come up. And so really helping people understand what are some of the warning signs, making sure that they're asking the appropriate questions or they're confirming identities of individuals. And so they're not falling victim. They're not writing checks to somebody that they're not aware of who that's going to be, and not making any kind of decisions under pressures. And so just, again, reminding consumers that they need to do their due diligence. If a message sounds too good to be true, it might be. Although I will say some of these rebates and discounts are wonderful, right? And so, we want consumers to understand those resources. We want them to understand the message, but we want them to be asking those critical questions as well, and making sure that they're really understanding what's available. So there are some resources, and Jenny mentioned this impact of climate change in American household finances resource from the Department of Treasury. One of the pieces that they have in this document is actually resources for support. And they actually pull out 3 different resources. So they have Federal Trade Commission staying alert to weather-related scams. We have the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's frauds and scams resources. And then the Office of Comptroller of the Currency has their help with mybank.gov resource. And again, these have great resources and information about helping people identify those scams and making sure that they're asking those diligent questions and not falling victim in this situation. Again, because this is so new, there's a lot of unknown information out there, and there's a lot of opportunity. And so, again, just really helping consumers making sure they're asking the right questions and getting the right information. The other piece that's in this climate change documentation is, again, talking about disaster preparedness. And so Sherrie talked a little bit about the fact that if we don't make some of these changes, climate change concerns are available. And so thinking about what are some of the resources that we have. And again, this document does a great job of calling some wonderful resources around financial education and disaster preparedness. And so how do we prepare for disasters? What are some of the ramifications? What are some of the financial considerations that we need to be thinking about? And so again, there's some wonderful checklists and resources on this document as well. And we do have this link in your fact sheet as well. So one of the things that we want to talk about is really help you understand. So how do you access your state programs? And mention the fact that each state is a little bit different in how they're rolling things out. And it's specifically not just how they're rolling things out, but what are some of the features or focus. So one of the things that we've uncovered as we just looked within our 2 states was each state is approaching this very, very differently. So even though there's specific regulations and guidelines and information that's coming out, how each state is really focusing in the efforts and how they are actually rolling out is very, very different. So we do have some resources on here so you can learn a little bit about your specific programs as well as what your state offers. There's actually a guidebook that breaks down all of the information. So really, again, giving you some of the details of the Inflation Reduction Act and what's available. And then there's actually a fact sheet for each state from the White House. And that breaks down what each state specifically is doing and how they are allocating their funding to support the Inflation Reduction Act in each specific state. The other thing that we've also learned as we've been having these discussions and conversations is that things are constantly changing as they're rolling these out. And so keeping in contact with what's available and checking your local state's information so that you have the most up-to-date information is really important as well. The other thing that we wanted to talk about, and this is a little bit adjacent, a little bit different than our Inflation Reduction Act, but there are 3 states, so Purdue University Extension, Michigan State University Extension, and then the University of Florida Extension Service has developed a Sustainable Living Series course that has, as a part of this course, they actually talk about energy as an opportunity to think about how you can become more sustainable. So we wanted to share that information here as well, because again, even though it doesn't specifically focus on financial information and consumers, it is a topic that's adjacent to this conversation as we think about how we become more sustainable in the future. So the Sustainable Living course provides attendees with a wide range of knowledge, including real-world examples to help strengthen critical thinking skills related to the future sustainability actions and decisions. Some of the topics that they actually have available, if you can go to the next slide, please, Jenny. Here is actually a listing of all the topics that are available. And again, energy is one of the topics within this course, but individuals can also learn about Sustainability 101, consumerism, food, water, and then also talking about applying what you've learned at home and in your community. There's also a number of new topics that are being developed that are going to be launched in 2024 as asynchronous classes for past or current participants in the hybrid course. And so some of those courses you'll see are things like climate change, addressing housing, talking about land use and landscaping, as well as zero waste events. And again, they're continually adding courses to this as well. Each topic is actually kicked off with 1 to 3 short informational videos. If you can go to the next slide, please. So 1 to 3 short informational videos that explores trends, statistics, actions, and how leaders in sustainability are making a difference in our world. Each video is about 20 minutes in length, and the longest set of videos is about basic sustainability is around 45 minutes in length. So these are short videos for you to gain additional information. Participants then attend a 90-minute live webinar on the topic. And during the webinar, participants ask questions, They discuss topics and participants, and then they participate in virtual hands-on activities and an online learning and sharing platform which is called Miro, and it allows people to really kind of engage in the content and really see everything that's available. As a result, participants develop a personal sustainability plan, outlining changes in behaviors and activities that they plan to make in their own lifestyle. Participants are also encouraged to develop a similar plan for how they might more engage in sustainable lifestyle activities in their own community. So if anybody is interested in this sustainable living series, you can feel free to contact any of the individuals. So Marie Ruemenapp, Dr. Ruemenapp, and Bethany Prycookie are two of the individuals involved with the state of Michigan through Michigan State University Extension. We also have Linda Seals and Ramona, I'm going to say her name wrong, Med Hosing and Hector, and then Purdue University Extension, Steve Yoder. So all of these individuals are available to assist if you are interested in offering the sustainability living course in your community. So that is the end of our formal presentation. What questions do people have?